Australia is one of the richest countries in the world, a place people dream of moving to for a better life. So why are so many of its own citizens, people working full-time, finding it impossible to buy a home? This chart right here proves it. What you're looking at isn't just a line going up. It's the death of a dream for an entire generation. For decades, the great Australian dream was simple: work hard, save up, buy a house, and raise a family. But today, that dream feels more like a fantasy. So what went wrong? And more importantly, is there any end in sight? The short answer is no, and the reasons why are more complex and, frankly, more infuriating than you might think. This isn't just a story about numbers and interest rates. It's a human story about young people, families, and immigrants whose futures are being held hostage by a system that seems rigged against them. Let's break it down. For the average Australian, buying a home now requires saving for over 10 years just for the down payment. 10 years. In Sydney, it's even worse. Closer to 15. Think about that. A decade and a half of your life, just to get your foot in the door. Compare this to the United States or Canada, which have their own housing issues. Australia is in a league of its own. House prices here are some of the most overvalued in the developed world, relative to income. It's not that people aren't working hard enough, it's that the finish line keeps moving further and further away. So how did we get here? For over 20 years, Australian governments, both liberal and conservative, have fueled this fire. They've implemented policies like negative gearing and capital gains tax discounts, which sound complicated but essentially do one thing. They turn housing from a place to live into a financial asset for investors to speculate on. These policies reward people for buying multiple properties, driving up prices and pushing out first-time buyers. While investors get tax breaks, young families are stuck renting, paying off someone else's mortgage, with little hope of ever having their own. The system actively incentivizes investors over residents. It's created a two-tiered society, the property haves and the property have-nots, and it's not just government policy. The Reserve Bank of Australia played its part, too. For years, they kept interest rates at historic lows, making it incredibly cheap to borrow massive amounts of money. This cheap debt flooded the market, and with more money chasing the same number of houses, prices had nowhere to go but up. Up and up and up. It was a party for anyone who already owned property. Their net worth skyrocketed without them lifting a finger. But for those trying to get in, they were left outside in the cold, watching the prices climb to impossible heights. Now, with rates rising to combat inflation, the pain is twofold. Mortgage payments are soaring for those who manage to get in, while prices haven't dropped nearly enough to make homes affordable for new buyers. It's the worst of both worlds. Let's talk about the human cost, because that's what really matters. I see the frustration everywhere. Young people in their late 20s and 30s, with good jobs, living with their parents, or in share houses, because they simply can't afford a place of their own. They're delaying major life decisions, getting married, having children because they lack the financial security that a stable home provides. Think about the impact that has on society. We're talking about a generation whose dreams are being deferred, possibly forever. And it's not just young people. We see families crammed into small apartments, unable to find a home with a backyard for their kids to play in. We see essential workers, nurses, teachers, police officers being priced out of the very communities they serve. How can a city function when the people who keep it running can't afford to live there? Immigrants who come to Australia seeking opportunity are also hit hard. They arrive with dreams of building a new life, only to be confronted with a rental market that's brutally competitive and property prices that are completely out of reach. They contribute to the economy, they enrich our culture, but the promise of stability remains a cruel illusion for many. This isn't just an economic problem, it's a social crisis. It creates resentment and division. It erodes the social fabric that holds a country together. The sense of a fair go, a core part of the Australian identity, feels like a distant memory when it comes to housing. People are angry, they're anxious, and they feel betrayed by a system that was supposed to support them. So, why won't this crisis end anytime soon? Because the very things that caused it are now too big to fail. The entire Australian economy is dangerously dependent on high property prices. A significant crash, the kind that would actually make housing affordable, would have catastrophic consequences. It would wipe out the wealth of millions of homeowners, many of whom are retirees who rely on their property value for their retirement. It could trigger a major banking crisis, as the big banks are heavily exposed to home loans, and it would likely cause a deep recession. No politician, from any party, is willing to risk that. They are trapped. They'll talk about housing affordability, they'll announce minor tweaks and small-scale programs, but they will never do what's necessary to bring prices down in a meaningful way. It's political suicide. They will continue to tinker around the edges. Maybe they'll offer a new grant for first-home buyers, which, ironically, often just pushes prices up further by adding more demand. They might talk about increasing housing supply, which is definitely needed, but that's a slow, long-term process that won't solve the immediate affordability crisis. The fundamental driver's tax policies favoring investors and the economy's reliance on property will remain untouched. We are stuck in a feedback loop. High prices create wealth for existing owners, who then have a powerful vested interest in keeping prices high. They are a massive voting bloc, and their political power ensures that the system that benefits them stays in place. The government is essentially choosing to protect the wealth of older, established homeowners at the expense of the aspirations of the young and the future prosperity of the country. What does the future look like then? It looks like a society with a permanent renter class. A future where your economic destiny is determined not by how hard you work, but by whether your parents owned property. It means more social inequality, more economic insecurity, and a continuing sense of disillusionment and frustration. The great Australian dream won't be about owning a home anymore. For a growing number of people, the dream will simply be finding a secure, long-term rental they can actually afford. This is the quiet reality that politicians don't want to talk about. The crisis won't end because the people in power don't have the will to end it. They've decided that the pain of solving the problem is greater than the pain of letting it continue. But it's a pain that isn't shared equally. It's a pain felt most sharply by the young, the hopeful, and the hard-working people who are being locked out of their own future. This is a defining issue for Australia. It challenges our identity and our values. Are we a country of the fair go, or are we a country where the ladder is pulled up behind the lucky few? The current path leads to a more divided, more unequal, and a much angrier society. Real change requires bold, politically difficult decisions, and right now, there's no one willing to make them. Thanks for watching. If this story resonates with you, make sure to like, subscribe, and share your own experiences in the comments below. Let's keep this conversation going.